His greatest source of power is being drained daily. They made him believe that sexual freedom is synonymous with masculine strength, that showing desire all the time represents vitality, that his identity must be defined by the pursuit of sexual pleasure. But understand this with total clarity. This idea was strategically implanted. They planted it in his mind like a broken compass that sends his most valuable energy far from its true potential. And he absorbed this distorted idea completely. He became a leaking reservoir, a generator of strength that wastes its fuel before creating any real power. What's truly devastating? They convinced him that conserving his vital energy means repression, that redirecting his sexual energy elsewhere is the same as denying his nature, that any form of containment represents a kind of death of the mind. Have you ever wondered why this universal conditioning exists? It's because a man who is always spending his energy in the pursuit of immediate pleasure never accumulates enough strength for a creation that transforms things. Because while his energy flows only horizontally, his mental empires remain unbuilt. Because while he chases many fleeting pleasures, he could be developing a unique and higher purpose. And here we arrive at the crucial point, because what Jung discovered totally contradicts everything modern culture values. You don't need to eliminate your sexuality. What you need is to transform it through inner alchemy, to redirect it. Modern civilization built its central narrative around a basic error, that sexual freedom is the same as mental freedom. Jung saw this as perhaps the most effective prison of the mind, the one the prisoner believes is liberation. Today's man is bombarded every day with images and messages that reinforce a dangerously simple idea. His value as a man and his purpose are measured by his ability to attract and have sexual encounters. This focus on the most basic form of vital energy creates a consciousness always directed outward, seeking the approval of others, chasing achievements with no aim beyond themselves. What makes this prison especially dangerous is that it appears to be a free choice. Unlike times past when sexual prohibition was clear and mandatory, the current era promotes sexual desire without restraint, under the disguise of personal freedom. Jung noticed that we've traded one kind of domination for another, possibly more harmful, precisely because it's less visible. The man who believes he's acting on his own by endlessly seeking sensual pleasure often doesn't realize how that very pursuit has been carefully orchestrated by external forces, with interests in keeping his mind divided and focused downward. Modern brain science confirms what Jung intuited. Every time we seek immediate sexual pleasure, especially through artificial stimuli like pornography, we reinforce neural pathways that gradually dominate our way of thinking. The male brain, designed to react strongly to sexual images, ends up being reprogrammed when it's constantly exposed to levels of stimulation it was never built for. This shift in the brain begins to show as increasing difficulty in maintaining focus, less willpower for long-term projects, and diminished satisfaction from real-life encounters. And what's especially concerning is how this fixation on the most basic form of vital energy obstructs natural psychological growth. Jung understood something few dare to say aloud. Sexual energy is merely the simplest expression of a much greater force, vital energy in its full and total sense. When this energy is trapped in its most primitive state, the higher regions of the mind, intuition, abstract creativity, deep symbolic thinking, fail to develop. The man remains, in essence, psychological adolescent, no matter how many years pass, caught in stimulus-response loops that merely disguise themselves under adult behavior. This childish mindset hides behind emotional dependency, cloaked in the mask of sexual conquest. Jung saw the contradiction clearly. Men who appear to have great sexual success often reveal deep insecurity and an endless need for validation. Sexual conquest ceases to be an expression of true vitality. Instead, it becomes a desperate attempt to fill an inner emptiness that curiously deepens with each hollow encounter. The endless cycle of craving, conquering, feeling brief pleasure, and then returning to emptiness creates the perfect mindset for consumption. A man who is perpetually unsatisfied, forever searching for fulfillment in the next external thrill, but never finding it there. Jung's most innovative idea about the male psyche was this: vital energy, far from being merely sexual force, is the total mental energy available for human evolution, and this vital force obeys a single powerful law. It cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed and redirected. What Jung called sublimation isn't some artificial suppression of sexual desire. It's the conscious transformation of that desire into higher forms of creativity and spiritual expression, a kind of mental alchemy. And this inner alchemy operates through what Jung called the transcendent function, the mind's ability to transmute raw energy into more complex and integrated manifestations. Sexual drive in its raw state is potent, but unrefined, uncontrolled. Yet with conscious practice, this same energy can be lifted to fuel artistic creation, deep insight, spiritual connection, and an unshakable will. The difference is never in the amount of energy, but in how it's used and expressed. Human history is filled with examples of this transformation. Newton, Tesla, Beethoven. Many creative giants often chose periods of sexual abstinence to focus their vital energy into works that altered the world. Jung observed this across spiritual traditions, from religious orders in the West to esoteric practices in the East, all of which developed precise techniques for channeling sexual energy into elevated states of consciousness. What sets these practices apart from mere repression is that they do not deny sexual energy, they consciously redirect it through specific disciplines. The way this transformation occurs in the mind involves what Jung called the introversion of the libido, the act of turning mental attention and energy inward, away from the external object of desire, and toward the process of inner development. This shift in focus allows the energy that was once scattered in search of outer pleasure to be gathered and concentrated within. The result is not less vital force, but its intensity and refinement, like the difference between scattered heat and the focused power of a laser beam. Jung perceived that this transformation of energy often accompanies the process of individuation, the gradual journey of becoming a complete person. Staying too long in the purely physical expression of vital energy is often a sign that personality development is stalled. Meanwhile, the ability to sublimate typically goes hand in hand with increasing awareness and the integration of parts of the self that were once divided. This connection suggests that redirecting sexual energy is not merely a technique for being more productive, but an essential element of full psychological maturation. It's important to note that Jung emphasized this process does not mean radical denial of the body or rejection of sexuality as a meaningful part of human experience. On the contrary, it means having a more conscious and intentional relationship with one's own vital energy. Sexuality that is integrated into the whole personality is entirely different from sexuality that runs wild, a separate force that often turns destructive. The former enriches and completes the rest of life, the latter impoverishes and replaces it. This difference between integrated and compulsive sexuality is one of Jung's most important contributions to understanding healthy masculine growth. Modern society presents a shockingly simple and incomplete idea of masculine power. Jung observed how the modern era has reduced the archetype of the warrior to a caricature, the one who conquers sexually, who accumulates things, who dominates superficially, while the deeper and more powerful aspects of mature masculinity remain almost entirely unexplored. The key contrast Jung identified is this: true masculine power often emerges not through the constant discharge of energy in external conquests, but in the capacity to contain, concentrate, and consciously direct vital energy. Historically, nearly all male development traditions recognized this fundamental rule. Self-mastery precedes mastery over others. From the samurai warrior to the medieval knight, from the Zen monk to the Stoic philosopher, the powerful man was not defined primarily by his ability to control others, but by his ability to govern himself. Jung recognized that this ancient wisdom has been almost completely inverted in modern male thinking, where giving in to impulse is confused with freedom and self-control is mistakenly seen as repression. This basic deception creates a strange reality. Men who chase power through constant sexual expression often find their true strength fading. Energy disperses when sexual release becomes frequent, especially when it's driven by psychological need rather than conscious choice. This literally drains the nervous system of the vital resources required for transformative action. The aftermath of this drain is often subtle: less willpower, weakened mental clarity, a quiet decline in inner strength, precisely the qualities needed to wield real power in the world. Jung saw that this pattern of scattered energy creates a cycle of dependency, where a man constantly seeks stronger external stimuli to compensate for a growing inner void. This dynamic matches exactly what Eastern traditions referred to as Jing leakage, the gradual loss of essential vitality through excessive and indiscriminate sexual expression. The man is quite literally emptied, not only in body, but also in energy and mind, becoming increasingly easy to manipulate from the outside and less capable of holding his own vision and purpose. The contrast deepens when we consider the link between a desexualized mind and true masculine charisma. Contrary to the common belief that male attraction comes from constant pursuit of sexual validation, Jung observed that men who develop the power of transformation often display a unique kind of magnetism that goes far beyond ordinary physical appeal. This phenomenon arises from concentrated vital energy, which, when not constantly discharged, creates a noticeably stronger and more impactful mental presence. Historical figures like Gandhi, whose vow of celibacy coincided with the rise of extraordinary personal charisma, stand as powerful examples of this dynamic. The strange nature of this power lies in its ability to be both active and receptive. Unlike the purely aggressive masculinity that society often promotes, the strength born from a desexualized mind combines focused firmness with a deep capacity to receive. This is a quality Jung associated with the healthy integration of the anima, the inner feminine, within the masculine psyche. Such inner union enables a man to have firm direction and adaptive flexibility, to make clear decisions while remaining intuitively open, a combination far beyond the limits of the one-dimensional masculinity we see today. The man who has mastered this inner alchemy reaches a paradoxical state. By being less ruled by sexual desire, he becomes more truly powerful in every area of his life. This is the secret Jung understood, and it directly contradicts the dominant narrative about masculinity and power, that true masculine freedom doesn't come from surrendering to impulse, but from the ability to transform basic energy into forms that are increasingly refined and impactful. Throughout history, there has existed an almost invisible line of men who mastered the art of energy transformation, figures Jung saw as living examples of what it means to become a complete man. These men rarely spoke openly about their practices, but the massive impact they had on civilization reveals the extraordinary potential of vital energy when consciously directed. They form a kind of unorganized secret society, masters of inner alchemy, whose methods and results stand completely opposed to today's popular ideas of power and masculine fulfillment. Nikola Tesla, whose inventions literally brought light to the modern world, chose celibacy, preserving his vital energy for creative work. He clearly stated that his inventive genius came from transforming sexual energy into intellectual power. I don't think you can name any great invention or achievement in the history of the world that was not accomplished by a man who lived in total control of his sexual instincts. Tesla once said, his imagination was so extraordinary that he could literally design and test entire machines in his mind before building a single physical piece, a striking example of the creative power that Jung linked to transformed vital energy. Isaac Newton, arguably the greatest genius in the history of Western science, also practiced strict sexual conservation. His contemporaries often spoke of his apparent lack of interest in sensual pleasures, seeing it as strange, when in truth, it was a conscious discipline to focus vital energy on the pursuit of the universe's most fundamental mystery. Jung noted that Newton's ability to maintain intense focus on extraordinarily complex problems, often working tirelessly for days, revealed the kind of extraordinary mental power available when vital energy is not constantly scattered. In spiritual traditions, Mohandas Gandhi stands as a particularly compelling example of this inner alchemy. Adopting a brahmacharya vow of celibacy in midlife, Gandhi transformed from an ordinary lawyer into a spiritual and political force of global impact. He explicitly linked his growing inner strength and outward influence to the transformation of sexual energy. Brahmacharya means control of all the senses in thought, word, and action. A man or woman who follows pure brahmacharya is fully capable of any spiritual or physical vitality. The incredible charisma Gandhi developed, his ability to influence millions without holding any formal institutional power, perfectly illustrates the kind of true strength Jung associated with successful sublimation. In philosophy, Arthur Schopenhauer perhaps explained most clearly the relationship between sexual conservation and intellectual power. The nervous energy preserved by renouncing sexual satisfaction becomes available for other functions of the body, he observed. Schopenhauer noted that all great works of art, poetry, music, and philosophy were created by individuals who succeeded in transforming their sexual drive. This observation predicted what modern brain science has now confirmed. The same neuroresources used for sexual processing are precisely those needed for high-level intellectual and creative achievement. Jung saw the same pattern in extraordinary artists, Beethoven, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, who often experienced phases of intense creation during chosen sexual abstinence. This connection was no coincidence. It served as direct proof of the law of conserving and directing energy, the almost supernatural intensity that defines the greatest works of human art, often originates from this very concentration and elevation of vital energy, which would otherwise be expended in its purely physical form. But perhaps the most striking trait of these quiet masters was not only their incredible productivity, but a very specific kind of presence they developed. People who met them often spoke of an aura, a different energy emanating from these figures, a magnetic quality that surpassed ordinary physical attraction. This presence emerged directly from the density of energy that naturally forms when life force is consciously conserved and refined, creating a mental field so powerful that others feel it intuitively and respond to it instinctively. Applying Jung's ideas on energy transformation in today's world requires an approach that is both practical and profound. Jung emphasized that this is not merely a behavioral technique, but a deep psychological journey that unites body, mind, and spirit. The modern man faces unique challenges on this path, living in a world flooded with sexual stimuli, designed specifically to divide attention and drain vital energy. Yet precisely because of these challenges, the potential to stand out through conscious practices has become more important than ever. The first practical step is what Jung called the withdrawal of projection, the act of recognizing how mental energy is habitually projected outward onto objects of desire. To observe directly, without judgment, how the mind automatically expends energy on sexual fantasies, on seeking approval, on compulsive behaviors, is to begin dissolving the unconscious identification with these impulses. This conscious observation gradually creates a vital inner space between stimulus and response, where true choice becomes possible. It's important to highlight that Jung drew a clear distinction between repression, caused by psychological imbalance, and conscious transformation. Repression happens when natural impulses are denied and pushed into the unconscious, where they continue to act as separate, often destructive forces. Transformation, on the other hand, requires fully acknowledging the impulse, then consciously redirecting the underlying energy. This difference is crucial. Many avoid energy conservation practices because they confuse healthy transformation with harmful repression, not realizing they are entirely different psychological processes. Practices that involve both body and mind have proven especially effective in helping with this redirection of energy. Disciplines such as yoga, qigong, and the internal martial arts were designed precisely to channel vital energy through the body-mind system, refining it into higher form. These traditions offer advanced techniques to circulate and elevate energy that would otherwise be spent in its purely physical expression. Jung, recognizing the wisdom of such paths, often recommended bodily practices as essential support for inner psychological work. At the same time, contemplative practices are crucial. Regular meditation creates a space where impulses can be observed without immediately identifying with them, allowing the underlying energy to be consciously redirected. Jung saw meditation not as a tool for relaxation, but as a transformative practice that gradually alters our fundamental relationship with vital energy. Especially helpful are meditative practices that cultivate awareness of energy, moving within the body-mind system, allowing it to rise from lower centers to higher ones. The practical side of this work also includes careful attention to diet and lifestyle. Jung observed a direct link between consumption habits and the capacity to transform energy. Overstimulating diets, alcohol, recreational drugs, and irregular sleep greatly obstruct the transformation process, creating bodily states in which vital energy is easily wasted rather than refined. A simple diet, proper hydration, regular contact with nature, and sufficient sleep create the physical foundation for deeper psychological work. Equally important is conscious awareness of the information environment. The modern mind is relentlessly bombarded with sexualized images and messages designed to hijack and redirect mental energy. If Jung were alive in the digital age, he would certainly stress the importance of establishing conscious boundaries around media consumption, understanding that attention is literally a form of energy. Practices like regular digital detoxes, deliberately limiting exposure to sexualized content, and creating physical spaces free from distracting stimuli all support the concentration of energy. The deepest aspect of this modern path involves what Jung called active imagination, the conscious engagement with symbolic images that arise from the unconscious when vital energy is directed inward instead of outward. This process allows the gradual integration of vital energy into the full development of the personality, so that energy once spent on purely physical expression now fuels the intellectual, creative, and spiritual dimensions of human experience. The result is not deprivation, but an extraordinary enrichment of life, the exact opposite of what the dominant cultural narrative suggests. Now that you understand the power of a desexualized mind, the crucial question becomes, will you continue to scatter your vital energy for momentary gratification, or will you begin to transform it into creative force to manifest your highest potential? Before we end, ask yourself, what 3 areas of your life would benefit the most if you mastered the art of energy transmutation? If this message resonated deeply, type in the comments, "Inner Mastery, Outer Power." Share this video with someone who needs this reflection. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content like this. See you in the next one.